You're listening to the Why That Work podcast presented by StoryBrand.AI. If you've ever wondered why certain brands, trends, or cultural phenomena find success while others don't, you're in the right place. Every week we unpack why something worked, then give you actionable insights that you can use in your own life. Now let's dive in with your hosts, Donald Miller and Kyle Reed.
Kyle Reed, the first episode of the Why That Work podcast is upon us.
We're here on an awesome brand new set.
Yeah. One of the reasons we're doing this podcast and talking about best practices and why things worked is just because you and I are always having these conversations.
And one of the things we realized is in these conversations about why things worked, that there's a lot of value in these conversations.
Yeah.
That,
It'd be worth recording it.
Yeah, not just for me and you, but for other people to hear as well.
Yeah.
Some of the things I've already written down as some ideas for some shows is like, why does TikTok work?
Yeah.
Have you thought about that?
I've thought about that from the perspective of social media a lot.
Yeah.
Another one. Immediately, what's funny is immediately when you say, why does TikTok work? My brain starts listing reasons, right? And then you want to actually go to artificial intelligence and say, okay, analyze this and get all the stories out of that.
Another one is like around the office, there's a lot of people here who are big fans of like Taylor Swift. So I'm asking myself.
Are we going to do a Taylor Swift episode?
I think we should.
Really?
Yeah, well, it's a good conversation.
Do you even want to go there? There's so many landmines.
I know. I feel like I should.
People are very touchy and very sensitive.
Okay, you tell us what we're going to talk about. Let's transition us out of that.
I'm willing to go, but I think we need mediators. I want to talk about, and I don't know if you're going to let us do it, but if we're going to agree to it, tattoos, because they're everywhere. Tattoos were like, I have a tattoo now. That was a totally like rebellious, crazy, like why would you mark your skin permanently? And now they're totally socially accepted and all that kind of stuff. I'd love to do an episode on the history of them, what the utilitarian purposes of them were early on, when it became a cultural identity. That stuff is going to be, I think, really fun.
Yeah, we have other conversations with Top Gun.
Maverick.
Yeah, Top Gun Maverick will be fun.
We've put down a date on the calendar to record that one, so that one's a go.
Today, though, what are we going to talk about?
Frameworks.
Why should we start with frameworks, do you think?
I think because frameworks and the way I think we're going to be able to define them, hopefully, and the way we're going to talk about why they succeeded, actually explain why almost every episode that we're going to record from here on out, with what it's actually about. Huh. That, in other words, like Top Gun Maverick, which I think we've greenlighted, is a framework. The movie itself is a framework. The roll up to the movie is a framework.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think once you understand what frameworks are, why they work, how they work, and maybe how to create them, you can change the world.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff we're talking about seems like they follow a framework, and
exactly.
So every episode is probably going to examine a framework.
It's the operating system that everything is operating on in terms of intellectual ideas. I would actually call a framework something like a mental map.
Oh, okay.
It's a map that you can actually get your head around where you are, where we want to go, why we want to go there, how to get there. But it's almost like a map of an idea map.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of your superpowers is discovering frameworks for businesses, for yourself.
Yeah.
I know for me over the last 10 years, I've discovered, I didn't realize it, but it was kind of like peeking behind a curtain going, oh, this is all just structured frameworks.
Yes.
People have just created a better process than I have. But kind of just that revelation of that over time of realizing that everything I'm doing, whether it being a dad, being a worker, being a better husband, whatever, even golfer, it's just around a framework.
Yes.
It's around a process.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, as we're talking here, is how would you even define frameworks?
I would define frameworks. It's a great question, and probably get some pushback from the audience or at least some midrash. But I would define frameworks as rules and boundaries.
Go more. Yeah. Tell me more.
So if you're going to do like P90X is a framework, right? So the rules are for the next 90 days, you're going to eat this, you're going to get up, you're going to do this workout on day 1, this workout on day 2. They're rules that maybe help us understand and activate and execute virtually anything. In fact, I just put together my rules for 2025 workout. And there's 3 resistance workouts, R1, R2, R3. There's a cardio one that is symbolized with the letter C. And I put up a calendar, an entire 2025 calendar on my gym wall, and I've got to write R1, R2, R3, or C, or H, which is I was in a hotel room, on each of those days. Every single day of 2025 has to be filled.
Wow.
And, these are 20-minute workouts,
Sure.
some of them. So, you just got to get down to the garage and lift some weights and get out and write your thing on the thing.
Yeah.
The whole idea, even the idea of step 1, put a calendar on your wall. Step 2, figure out 5 different exercises with 10 reps and the weights, and then call that R1, R2, R3 the next day, C for cardio, H for if you're in a hotel room. That everything I just said is the creation of a get in shape framework. So that's what that's an example. Like, it's rules and guidelines, it's processes that you would take to streamline activity. Now, for everybody listening, if you can turn whatever you're doing into a framework, you can help a lot more people because they can get their mind around it so much easier. But yeah, I think the discovery of frameworks for me personally was groundbreaking. It was a total shift in my career because Blue Like Jazz and A Million Miles in 1,000 Years and Father Fiction, there weren't frameworks really, maybe Father Fiction a little bit, but there weren't frameworks in those books. And then I did a consulting job for Accenture, the big, powerful, consulting firm, and they needed me to create a framework based on some narrative ideas. And that framework was a project management framework. And then I thought, well, that would work for marketing. And all of a sudden I was penning a framework that I don't even think I knew what a framework was while I was writing it. But that started everything. And I think every book I've written since then has been a framework.
Wow. So that's how you came up with the StoryBrand framework.
Yeah. It's a derivative of a project management framework that nobody ever, 50 people saw it, at a consulting firm. I didn't, I started my career as a writer. I wrote memoirs. And so I would read Anne Lamott, I would read Frank McCourt, I would read, I'd read books, and then I'd try to write my own memoir based on some of the way that they wrote theirs, and they were vulnerable here, and then they got to the point here, and they kind of did a deep dive here, and then they started chapters like this, and they ended chapters like this. What I didn't realize I was doing by reading all of these books and trying to imitate them in some way, or at least use what's working in their book in my own voice to write my story, is I was actually, like an archaeologist, slowly uncovering frameworks. William Zinsser, his book on writing well, is frameworks on how to write nonfiction. Ray Bradbury has a book on writing. Stephen King has a book on writing. And then slowly as I began to uncover, wait, these are frameworks. I didn't think of them as frameworks. I thought they were just advice on writing. Yeah. But these authors had their frameworks. Yeah. And so I started using these frameworks, and my books got better. Yeah. In fact, my first book sold 10,000 copies. My second book sold 1.4 million. And I would say the difference is I discovered frameworks between those two. When
even before that, when did you, for your early life, were you noticing frameworks were playing a part in your life and kind of learning about just were you aware of that when you were working on stuff?
I don't know if I was aware of it, but I had the privilege and strange experience of growing up in a Southern Baptist church. Every pastor who got up there and gave a sermon had turned a passage of scripture into a framework. I was indoctrinated in that every week and every Wednesday night because my mother went to church on Sundays and on Wednesdays. And I was indoctrinated in these in sort of system speak. But really, when I probably between Prayer in the Art of Volkswagen Maintenance, my first book, and Blue Like Jazz, my second book, I discovered narrative frameworks. I discovered Robert McKee.
Yeah.
And Steve Taylor, who's a dear friend to this day, and I went to Southern California with my roommate, Jordan Green, and we attended a Robert McKee story seminar. Robert McKee is actually famous for sort of yelling and diminishing the people in his audience. Like if you ask a stupid question, he's going to let you know. He's going to let you know, and he's going to let you know loud. He'll even kick people out. So everybody's afraid of him. So that's kind of fun. But he teaches this. How do you open the movie? How do you close it? What happens in the Act 2 midpoint climax? All of that stuff. He's wildly entertaining and certainly very brilliant. He wrote a book called Story, and it's really good. That was my introduction to a narrative framework, and really my introduction to really formalizing processes. And later I read a book called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. That book, Story, a book called The 7 Basic Plots, all the way back to Plato's Poetics. All of these are explanations of how story structure worked. So I developed my own story structure and put it into building a story brand, and that book sold 1 million copies. Yeah. And so, I went from using frameworks, discovering frameworks, being indoctrinated in frameworks, using them to write better, and then ultimately creating one. and I never even knew it.
Yeah.
But frameworks have really guided my entire life and benefited me.
Yeah, I that clicked for me. I was talking to a friend not too long ago. He's jumping into executive coaching, super sharp guy. I think at one point he was lamenting to me a little bit of like, why am I not getting more clients, or like what's going on here?
Yeah. Well, he needs a framework on how to get clients.
That's why I told him,
clients framework.
I said the thing that you're doing it there.
Yeah, right,
You can't help it.
So step one, create a lead generator.
Exactly.
Step two, qualify those leads.
And it just hit me in the moment I was talking to him, and I think you've rubbed off on me so much, but I just said, what's your framework? Like you're talking, you want people to hire you. You have no process. I can't define what you're doing. And I think that was the light bulb moment for him and for me in that moment of going, oh, if I want to grow this, or if I want to be successful in this area, if I don't surround it with a framework, I'm not going to be successful. So even to your analogy about exercising, it's almost like you've taken the thought out of the actual process, because you've defined, I'm just going to follow these steps. It's going to get me to where I want to go.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting point, Kyle, because I'm convinced that the brain is always looking for cheat codes.
Absolutely.
Remember that game Chutes and Ladders?
Yes.
Where you could actually take like a chute and skip like 30 paces.
Yeah, my girls love to do that Candyland. They're always hoping if they hit the one. Yeah.
That's a framework.
Yeah.
When you hit that like weight loss framework,
Yep.
you're skipping a bunch of steps and you're making everything easier. What the human brain's attraction to frameworks is actually that it saves them mental calories.
Yes.
The brain burns between 600 and 800 calories a day. About 20% of the calories you burn, depending on your weight and all that kind of stuff, is burned by your brain. And it's also always trying not to burn those calories, because it's trying to conserve them in case you need cognitive resources later in the day. So it's always it's actually weirdly trying not to think.
Yeah.
And so when you actually say, here's a great way to lose weight, it's 90 days, you're going to do this, what you're saying is you don't have to actually think about any of this. You don't have to make decisions. You don't have to do the research. Just do what I tell you to do in this order. And at the end of it, according to television, they look pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I can be that
they
guy.
also work.
Yeah.
No,
100%. You're right. I think that's so fascinating, because I think a lot of us are walking around, we don't realize that is what we are doing. Yep. We are looking, one of the things.
Listen, you driving to work today, you drove on a framework.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The road is a framework.
Yeah. I didn't even really kind of pay attention. It just guided me along. I think that's the thing that's interesting about this, is even to some of the things I've talked to you about, is my view of what's going on right now across the media landscape is it's about curation. So, and for me, I think not everybody, that's a little exaggerative, but a lot of people are outsourcing their thinking to people they trust.
When we always have.
Yeah.
We always have.
So for someone listening to this, and I've got a lot already running in my head around frameworks, like how would someone translate this to a framework for themselves? Or how can they even
look at their own ideas?
Yeah, or even like I'm thinking about like my morning routine is all structured in a framework. And if I follow that, I have success. So someone listening to us, I think a natural question they're wondering is we've talked a little bit about
how can I make a framework?
Why frameworks are important, but like now how do I make a framework for myself, for business?
That is a question. Let me say this. Six Sigma bills for over $1 billion a year. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, discussed and taught in every school in this country, and rightly so. The 4 Ps of marketing, another marketing framework. SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. A very, very popular framework. The lean startup methodology. Simon Sinek is a great framework creator. He really is brilliant at that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He flipped the whole framework on its head, but then walked you through a framework.
Yeah. I mean, I think we love him because he simplifies very complicated ideas, and also he's just a likable guy. Yeah. The Golden Circle framework is his. Yeah. Jobs to be Done is a framework that helped Intuit double its stock price in only 2 years. Did you know that?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah, they incorporated a framework and they doubled their stock price because productivity increased so much. Wow. The business model canvas. You've heard of that, right?
Yep.
That's been used by millions of businesses worldwide. The StoryBrand framework. Listen, the StoryBrand framework helps you say it clearly. Yep. And I hope that we're the world leader on that, on helping you say it clearly. So, frameworks are really important if you are a thought leader or want to be a thought leader. There's a lot of people who have ideas out there. And let me tell you, the difference between a smart person with ideas and a thought leader is frameworks.
100%.
That's it.
Huberman so right.
is a smart guy.
Yes.
His new book, Protocol, turns him into a thought leader.
Yes.
Because he's turning all this stuff into actual processes and protocols
Yeah.
which is a framework. So
Jay-
his
like,
book
look at-
might as well be called Frameworks.
Yeah. Well, look at like James Clear. He's written Atomic Habits.
Yep.
That's a frameworks book.
Yeah.
He wrote it how many years ago? I mean, it's still going.
It's a best practices of, some of it is the best practices of existing frameworks,
Yeah.
but he's a genius at making them even more simple.
Absolutely.
The framework is having figured out what works.
Yeah. And I think the reassuring thing to me is that's then your unique, that's what makes you unique is your perspective
I believe in that.
on a framework.
Yeah.
You walk in and you go, this is my morning routine framework and this is why I do it. And these are the reasons. And you hear that from me, you go, oh, that's interesting. I've never thought about that. And then I hear yours and then we go back and forth, but it's a unique perspective on how but it's still structure. I've 2 kids. I don't just randomly wake up. Like there's a reason why I wake up at the time I do because of the goal I have to get me somewhere. And the framework keeps me going on that.
Yeah.
Tell me more about, we've been kind of going around a little bit of like, how can someone create frameworks or show up to frameworks?
Well, yeah, I would say the first rule would be turn it into rules.
Okay.
So you're looking for, let's just call them steps, steps to creating a great Instagram post.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the first thing you're going to figure out is, what are best practices? And, we're kind of doing this now, and you and I, because we do the StoryBrand Instagram feed. And we're discovering, if you're outside, we get more likes. Weird things. If you wear a colorful sweater, you get more likes. If you wear a cool hat, you get more likes. If we're driving around in the FJ40, you get more likes. If we actually do it from here, and also if we lead with the problem, when I start talking about it, we get more likes. If we, all this is best, it's summation of best practices.
That's right.
So we could actually probably by now, we haven't done this, but we could create a framework around Instagram
100%.
posts. And by the way, I already created in StoryBrand.AI social media
But
post
it's
rules.
guided by rules.
It's guided
Absolutely.
by hidden rules that you're not seeing.
Has to be. Yep.
You're typing in what's the problem, what's the thing I want to talk about, and then it gives you the talking points based on rules that you never even read.
Yep.
So it's incorporating frameworks in that way.
Yep.
So I think the first thing is rules,
Okay.
and the second is run those rules past best practices. Every recipe is a framework. And by the way, I'm the guy in the kitchen who really goes, can't you just pinch some salt? Why do you got to do a teaspoon?
No, it's got to be right.
And I've made some really bad meals because I won't follow the framework.
Yeah.
And I've learned to just, based on my wife's berating of me, I've learned to follow frameworks. And so you want to think of it as a recipe, a series of processes, and also combined with a visual that helps people understand it. So the mountain is often used. The triangle is often used.
Yep.
You want to find my framework for growing a small business is based on an airplane.
Yeah.
So the airplane framework. You want a visual that you can walk people through. I've given the StoryBrand talk now to probably well over 1 million people.
Yeah.
And it's a 7-part grid that slowly comes to life. It's a TED Talk now, by the way. You can go listen to
that's
it.
right.
It's just Donald Miller's StoryBrand TED Talk. And in 20 minutes, I go through a grid. That is the framework that I created that has highs and lows.
Yep.
And it visually helped people understand the 7 steps to, clarifying your message.
Man, there's so much already like why frameworks work.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
Well, you're going to see them everywhere.
You
now.
are. And
if you watch the news tonight, it's a framework.
Absolutely.
If you read it, there's an order of the way things are done, and even the way that copy is written is a framework inside of a framework.
Yep. And to think that you're just showing up and they're just
winging it,
there's no way.
No way.
Which is why I love I think Pressfield talks about just showing up and writing and like sitting down and spending an hour.
Which, by the way, The War of Art is a framework.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? I mean, that book, the brilliance of that book is he really created a framework on the psychological war it is to create art.
And there's something I think in our brains thinking it's not easy, but it can't be that easy. That if I follow this and show up and put in my uniqueness to this, it can work.
Yep.
I can make a business off of this.
Oh man, there are so many people listening to this. If you can teach a dog not to bark when somebody knocks at the door.
Yeah.
But you don't want to just say, I teach the dog not to bark.
Yeah.
I teach them the stop barking framework.
Yep.
Or I teach you to teach your dog the stop.
Yeah.
And as soon as you say the stop barking framework, you're worth about 10 times more than just, I have this magical ability that you cannot. We should talk about that, Kyle. The reason frameworks are so important for thought leaders is other people can teach them.
That's right. That's good.
If I create a framework, other people, we have, I don't know how many private workshop people who go out and teach StoryBrand.
Teach it, yeah, absolutely.
And we have 1,000 coaches now who teach either StoryBrand or the Small Business Framework. And so that was another reason that I started creating frameworks is I want to stay married. So it's like if I'm all on the road all the time teaching these things, winging it, sharing my wisdom, I can't be married because my wife won't stay married to me because I'm never home. So now I've got other people out there, an army of people actually doing that, and it's fantastic, and they're loving it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're helping them make money, and they're helping their clients make money. I've defined goals this way, but I think frameworks work this way as well. As if you imagine you get on a highway, and if there are no lanes, there are no guardrails.
Oh man, that's a great analogy.
There's no structure.
We've probably all been in countries that are like that.
Chaos.
It's absolutely insane.
Once you know the rules of the road, with our analogy here, then you can go, okay, I know where to go. I know how to get where I'm going. And now I can work backwards to get there. I think a framework is very similar.
What a freaking valuable episode. For
it's
been valuable for me.
Yeah, it's been
Makes
fun.
you want to go create more frameworks.
I think a couple takeaways is first off, look at all the frameworks around you.
Yeah, notice
them. But I really think that everybody listening to this has some unique thing they figured out that they know. And one of the things that could be holding them back is they just have not put it in a framework yet.
That's right.
And I think the artist in a lot of us goes, that's not how it really works.
Yeah.
But it's true. It really is true that if you can step back and go through those 3 things you talked about of creating a framework and try it with a friend. Just walk them through your framework of how how you get your kids fed in the morning or how you make your coffee or something, just to see, what the framework is that you uniquely show up with.
And the great thing about frameworks is they batch your thinking to leave more cognitive real estate, if you will, cognitive bandwidth, cognitive ability to solve other problems. That's right. That's why Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning is such a fantastic book.
Yep.
Just get your morning down. Get the things that you need to get done down.
Yep.
That's why my R1, R2, R3, I never walk into my garage gym, which is a cheap garage gym, wondering what I'm going to do. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to go, well, okay, did I work on abs?
And you know what's holding me back
R1, R2,
from
R3.
working out? Is I don't have that structure.
I'll send it to you.
But I don't, thank you. I don't have a framework that I follow because it's not a part of my routine.
And there's not rules.
There's not rules.
Yeah, rules are every day of 2025. There's a workout.
That's right.
There's a workout.
Right. Don, this has been, I'm having a lot of fun on this episode. I assume you are. I think people listening to this are already taking a ton of value. This podcast is coming out and you're in the midst of releasing a brand new book.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, sort of brand new. It's building a StoryBrand 2.0. Yeah. I added about 10,000 words, mostly stories of success stories of things that have happened when people applied these principles that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really interesting stories about how people, and it just helps people put sort of skin on how this framework can help you clarify a message and really understand it a little bit better. And then we added StoryBrand.AI, which is the sponsor of this podcast. Yes. So there's a free tool that the book refers to at StoryBrand.AI for you to create your brand script and your, I think, tagline. There's a free tagline generator.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, StoryBrand.AI. Go there, check that out.
And also grab the book, Building a StoryBrand 2.0. Grab it on Audible. There's also, forgot to mention this.
Talk about this.
Pete and Joe, there's a thing that we created called StoryBrand Radio Theater presents Pete and Joe Save Their Mother's Company. We actually wrote a radio play, a radio drama about 2 kind of absent-minded brothers who shouldn't be running a company, but you can get that on Audible.
We could probably spend another hour talking about how you came up with that idea. I love it's such a creative thing.
Really fun. We hired actors.
Yeah. It was some of the most fun I've had working here was working on that radio drama. Yeah. That was a blast. So I'm really excited for people to hear that.
So StoryBrand Radio Theater presents Pete and Joe Save Their Mother's Company.
Check that out on Audible, YouTube. Go get the new version of Building StoryBrand. Check out StoryBrand.AI. And most importantly, come back next week.
Because we're going to talk about
next week TikTok.
I didn't want to do TikTok because I don't use TikTok and I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
But I've already started deep diving into it. Holy rats.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Thanks for listening to the Why That Worked podcast presented by StoryBrand.AI. If you like the show, follow wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're enjoying this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment letting us know what you think and what you want the guys to talk about in a future episode. Curious about how StoryBrand.AI can help you create clear, effective messaging? Well, you can try it out right now and create a free customized tagline for your business. Just go to StoryBrand.AI. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.